think of sheriff's deputies out on patrol keeping our streets and homes safe. However, there's another part of the job that a large number of them are involved with. Mike McKnight tells us that's why Douglas County's new sheriff says he'll have a second office.
Whether leaving a contentious court hearing,
That's crazy.
Back up. Walk away.
or helping citizens find the right courtroom,
It's good to see you. Thank you. Right here, sir. Right there? Yep.
Douglas County Sheriff's deputies and security officers are highly visible and maintain order
All these pins in your pocket.
in the Civic Center or courthouse next door.
I think it's important to be in touch with the people in that building, whether it be city government, county government, various people within county and city government, and my staff.
The sheriff's main office is located at 156th and West Maple, which MapQuest says is 19 miles from the Douglas County Courthouse and Civic Center, where about 60 sheriff's deputies and employees work. And the sheriff having a second office at the courthouse or Civic Center would be a time saver as well. The drive from sheriff's headquarters to downtown Omaha, about 20 minutes or more, depending on traffic. So barely moved into his West Omaha office, Sheriff Aaron Hanson tells me he plans to have a second office downtown.
I think that given that a third of my staff is assigned down to the courthouse, and there's so much sheriff's office oriented activities down there, I think it's important to have a secondary office down at the somewhere either in the courthouse or the Civic Center.
The sheriff says he plans to spend a day or more a week in a second office close to where the public deputies and justice system interact. On your side, Mike McKnight, 6 News.
The Warrants Division and Civil Process Unit is located near the Douglas County Jail downtown. So altogether, the sheriff has more than 100 employees in or near the courthouse.